Nneka ran. She did not look back. She did not stop to think or pray or cry. She just ran barefoot through the wet grass, her wrapper soaked to her knees, her chest burning, her arms clutching a wooden box so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Behind her, the house breathed. That was the only word for it. Tunnel house exhaled, a long low sound like something ancient settling into fury. And the trees at the edge of the forest bent inward, reaching as if they had been told to bring her back. She ran faster. But we are getting ahead of ourselves, because 3 weeks ago, Nneka did not even know the forest had a name. 3 weeks ago, she was just a girl with cracked hands and a sick father and a debt that grew larger every morning she woke up. Let us go back to where it started. Asares Crossing was the kind of village that time forgot on purpose. Dust roads, thin goats, women who aged fast, and men who disappeared young. Nneka had lived there all 19 years of her life. And in that time, she had learned one thing with absolute certainty. Poverty was not loud. It did not announce itself. It simply tightened, quietly, like a hand around your throat, until one morning you woke up and realized you could no longer breathe. Her father, Kweku, had been sick for 4 months. The debt collectors came on Thursdays. It was a Wednesday evening when Baba Koto came to their door. He was the village elder, old, soft-spoken, always smelling of camphor and something Nneka could never name. He sat across from her mother at their small table and folded his hands and spoke in the careful tone of a man delivering news he had already made peace with. "There is a man," he said. "He lives beyond the hollow. He is wealthy beyond anything this village has ever seen. He is looking for a wife." Nneka's mother, Adwa, said nothing. She kept her eyes on the table. "He has sent gold," Baba Koto continued. He placed a small pouch on the table. It landed with a sound that made Nneka's stomach turn, not because it was too light, but because it was exactly heavy enough. Enough to clear the debt, enough for messing, enough for more than that. And what does he want in return? Nneka asked from the doorway. Baba Koto looked at her. Something passed through his eyes. Not guilt, exactly. Something older than guilt. "Only that you are honest with him," he said. "He asks for nothing more than a wife who speaks freely and hides nothing." Nneka looked at her mother. Her mother looked at the table. That was the conversation. That was all it took. She arrived at Thornwell House on a Friday, carried in a covered cart she was told not to look out of. When the cloth was pulled back and she stepped down onto the path, she stopped walking. The house was beautiful. That was the thing nobody warned her about, how beautiful it was. Warm amber light poured from every window. The garden was in full bloom. Despite the dry season, the stone walls were covered in dark green moss, and the smell, rich earth and night flowers, wrapped around her like something she had been missing without knowing. A figure appeared at the door. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in fine clothes, deep indigo and gold. His face was covered from the nose down by a fitted cloth mask, dark and smooth. "An old wound," he said before she could ask. His voice was low and even. "It has never healed. I hope it does not disturb you." "I have seen worse," Nneka said. He was quiet for a moment. Then something in his posture shifted, like he was smiling behind the mask. "Good," he said. "Come inside. You must be hungry." His name, he told her, was Orin. Past the very first week was the Simon. That was the word Nneka would later use when she turned it over in her mind. The signing. He did not crowd her. He did not make demands. He showed her the house at her own pace, answered her questions without deflecting, and made her laugh twice on the third day, which she did not expect and could not explain. Every evening, They sat across from each other at the long dining table, food between them, and he asked her questions. Not strange questions at first. Small things, gentle things. What frightened you when you were a child? Darkness, she said, and silence. I could not tell them apart. He nodded slowly, as if she had given him something valuable. What is the one thing you have never told your mother? She hesitated. Then, and she did not understand why, even as the words left her mouth, she told him. Something true and private and old, something she had carried for years. Afterwards, she felt lighter. She thought it was relief. She thought it was relief with what Relo released and Tellyson did not yet understand what he was doing with the words after she gave them to him. It was on the ninth day that she found the room. She had not been looking for it. She had simply followed a hallway she had not noticed before. Narrow, cold, smelling of something mineral and sharp. The door at the end was small and wooden and unlocked. She pushed it open. Her breath left her body. The room was filled floor to ceiling with jars, gas jars, clay jars, jars sealed with dark wax, hundreds of them arranged on shelves that lined every wall. Each one had a label, a name, a date. Some of the dates went back 50 years more, and they glowed faintly, softly, like something alive was pressing against the glass from inside. Nneka reached out and picked one up. The name on the label read Sola, 1987. She pulled the wax seal off with her lamb nail. A whisper rushed out, a woman's voice slow and urgent, speaking a secret so private Nneka felt shame just hearing it. A secret that had clearly been kept for years. A secret that had no business being in a jar on a shelf in a strange man's house. Nneka stood very still. She counted the jars. She counted the names. She was not the first. She was not the second. She was not even the 20th. She put the jar down carefully. She walked back to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time since arriving at Thornwell House, she let herself feel what she had been keeping very carefully behind her teeth since the moment Baba Koto sat down at her mother's table. Fear. Pure, cold, clarifying fear. That evening at dinner, when Oreen leaned forward and asked, "Much, what's the thing you are most ashamed of?" Nneka looked him in the eyes above the masks, smiled softly, and lied. She lied beautifully. That was the thing about growing up poor. You learned early how to make nothing look like something. Nneka had spent 19 years dressing up empty bowls and tired smiles and whispered arguments through thin walls. Fabricating a convincing secret for a spirit who fed on truth was, in the end, not so different. She gave him something vivid, emotional, texture with the kind of specific detail that made lies feel like memory. She watched his eyes above the mask as she spoke, and she saw it. The hunger, the satisfaction, the way his shoulders settled as he took it in, the way the candles on the table burned slightly brighter afterward. He was feeding, and she had just fed him smoke. 3 days passed. She kept lying. Each evening a new fabrication came, carefully constructed, emotionally convincing, never repeating. She studied him the way she used to study the debt collectors, learning the rhythms, their tells, their blind spots. Oreen was intelligent, he was patient, but he had one weakness she was beginning to understand clearly. He trusted hunger more than he trusted instinct. On the 4th day, the garden outside her window lost 3 flowers. On the 5th, the lamplight in the hallways dimmed. On the 6th morning, she woke to find frost on the inside of her window glass. In a house that had never once felt cold, he was starving, and he was starting to notice. She was in the library that afternoon when he appeared in the doorway without warning. He stood very still, watching her. The warmth that had characterized his manner in those first easy weeks was gone. What replaced it was something quieter and far more dangerous. "You have been giving me nothing," he said, Nneka did not look up from the book in her hands. I have been giving you everything you asked for. You have been giving me shells. His voice did not rise. That was somehow worse. Beautiful shells with nothing living inside them. I have been doing this for a very long time, Nneka. Do not insult me with theater. She closed the book slowly and looked at him. And how long is a very long time? Long enough that I have stopped counting. Long enough for Sola? She asked. And the woman before her? And the 40 women before that? The silence that followed was the loudest thing she had ever heard. Orin tilted his head. Something shifted in his eyes, not guilt, not shame, but the particular expression of someone recalibrating. You found the room. You left it unlocked. I did not think it would matter. You did not think I would make it that far, she said. You thought I would be empty by now. He said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Nneka stood up. She kept her voice even, the way her mother had taught her. Never let them hear the shake until you choose to use it. I want to leave. I want to walk out of this forest and go home to my father and never say your name again. You know you cannot. I know you cannot. Follow me, pant below me, past the tree line. She watched his eyes. Sola wrote it down. She was very thorough. Another silence, longer this time. Sola was clever. He said quietly, not clever enough. I am not Sola. I made the offer that evening at dinner. She sat down across from him exactly as she had every night for 2 weeks, and she folded her hands on the table and she spoke before he could ask his question. I have one secret left, she said, the last true one, the biggest one I have ever carried. I have been saving it. Orin went very still. I will give it to you willingly, she continued. Not pulled, not harvested. Freely given, which I think we both notice different, doesn't it? She watched his reaction carefully. In exchange, I want the room. I want every jar, every name, every woman you have taken and bottled and shelved. You give me the room and I give you the last secret. Then I walk out, and if I say no, then I give you nothing. Ever. I have lied to you for 6 days and I can lie to you for 6 years. I have nowhere else to be and nothing left to lose, and I am not afraid of the cold. She held his gaze. But I think you are afraid of starving. The candles flickered. Outside, the wind moved through the forest in a long, slow wave. Orin looked at her for a very long time. Then he said, tell me the secret. The jars first. He rose from the table. She followed him to the room. He placed his hand flat against the door, and it swung open wider than she had ever seen it. And for the first time she saw them all. Every shelf, every glowing jar, the full weight of everything he had taken. They are yours, he said. Nneka stepped inside and picked up the wooden box she had prepared that afternoon, large enough to hold them all. She began placing jars into it, one by one, and she did not rush. When the last jar was settled, she turned to face him. The secret, he said. She looked at him directly, clearly, without flinching. I was never afraid of you, she said. Not on the first day, not once. And a spirit that no living soul fears. She picked up the box. Has no true power over the living. The house shuddered. A deep structural sound like something load-bearing had just given way. The shelves rattled. Orin's form flickered at the edges, the way a reflection flickers when the water is disturbed. Nneka walked out of the room. She walked down the hallway. She walked through the front door without looking back. She ran. Barefoot through the wet grass, wrapper soaked to her knees, arms locked around the box of jars, chest burning. The trees reached for her. The path shifted twice. The darkness pressed in from every side with a kind of intention she felt on her skin. But the jars were warm against her arms, and from inside them, faint, urgent, unmistakable, she heard the whispers. Dozens of women's voices murmuring directions. Neftia step over that root. Do not stop. Do not stop. Do not stop. Do not stop. She did not stop. She broke through the tree line at the first grey light of dawn, stumbled onto the road, and fell to her knees in the dust. She opened every jar at the tree line. One by one, she pulled each wax seal free. The voices rose, not in pain, not in grief, but in something that sounded terribly close to relief, and dissolved upward into the morning air like breath on a cold day. Gone. Released. Finally free. She walked home. Her father recovered within the week. Baba went, which told Nneka everything she needed to know about how many people had always known. Life resumed. Quieter. Different. Nneka was different. She was slower to speak now. More deliberate. She answered most questions with a question of her own. The village women said she had come back from that forest with a stillness that had not been there before, like she had looked at something enormous and terrible, and had simply decided to keep walking. They were not wrong. She kept one jar, empty, wax seal removed, sitting on her windowsill where the morning light hit it, not as a trophy, not as a warning, just so she would never forget what words were worth, what they could cost, what they could free. And sometimes on the night when the wind came from the direction of the hollow, she heard it, faint and far away, almost too soft to be certain. The sound of empty shelves in a dimming house. A spirit with no secrets left to feed on. Hungry, patient, waiting. She had escaped him, but the hollow never forgets a name. If this story kept you hooked until the very last word, hit that like button right now. It means more than you know. And if you want more folklore horror stories like this one every week, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss one. Drop in the comments whose moment was your favorite. Nneka's lie, her trade, or the women in the jars. Tell us everything. We read every single one.